Welcome to another episode of Pistons of Fury. In this episode, we're removing the rusty metal from our trunk floor in our 1966 Dodge Coronet station wagon. Alright, a little behind the scenes view before we get started here. This is what my garage normally looks like. I got this mess of a table, which is taking the place of some future bench. I have this old Mopar junk that I can't even give away on Craigslist. Tool drawer's a wreck. The other desk, or bench back there, which you can't even see right now, that's also a mess. Got the wetsuit stuff hung up here. That's where it usually goes. And then this is my working space back here. I've got about maybe a little less than a foot between the tailgate of the wagon and my workbench, where I try to get work done, but now it's basically just a staging area for fuel system parts. Yeah, so this car being 18 feet long, this thing takes up my entire garage. This is technically it's like a two-car garage, but it was built in 1950. If you had nothing else in here, you could fit two cars and probably make it work, but I've got stuff lining this wall, stuff lining the far wall. So yeah, there's the light. We are going in the back of the car. Alright, so we're in the back of the car. There's usually an access panel or like a big trunk floor here that operates on this hinge. I did take that out just so I'd be able to come in here and actually see what's going on back here, because I do have to cut actually right where my feet are. This is where I've had the battery. This is like a total ghetto setup, just because it's not the way that it should have been done. I've got this, what formerly was a spare tire well, which is all rusted out. So while I'm in here, while the gas tank's out, I need to cut this out. But before I do that, I've got to basically take the battery out here and clean this up. It's gross. It's full of sand and dirt and beach stuff. Everything back here is rusted, so I'm gonna have to go back through all of this at some point in the future. But for now, gotta get the battery out of here, gotta see how much damage I have in here and if I can just repair that. So yeah, fun times. Alright, so here's what we're dealing with. This is the spare tire well, as I said before. It's got this little step in here, which basically just steps up to where the tank is. So the gas tank ends right here, and then this is just all floor exposed to the outside, which is why it's rusted away like that. I think what I'm going to do is probably just get a big enough piece of sheet metal and cut this out, use that as a template, and then just come back in and build something that is basically all level at the height I need for the gas tank, but that just doesn't have this step right here. I don't need this added depth. I'm not actually using this as a spare tire well. Right now it holds the battery. Maybe one day I'll run a spare, but I doubt it. But anyway, you can replace this entire pan back here. It only comes as one piece. It's this whole area from the outside all the way from that inner body panel, or inner quarter panel, and right, so you just replace this entire back pan. So by me cutting and welding in a new one, I'm not actually doing any more damage to the car. Not like I'm going for a concours restoration here. It's more just functional at this point. So I need to get this cut out and get a piece of metal to basically take its place, and from there we should have everything out of the way that we need to come in here and cut some clearance for our new fuel sump. Now, if you remember, on the gas tank, our fuel pickup that we put in is probably going to occupy this space right here and actually go back to here. So we'll have to build some sort of raised platform here, box out the top of that, and make an access panel so that I'll be able to get to that fuel tank to my pump setup in the future, should I need to change it or add another one or do anything like that. So first step is cutting this floor out, getting a patch panel in there, and then we'll cut this out to clearance for the tank. Alright, it's a new day. We are back in the shop, and where I left off during the week was getting all this cleaned out and ready for plasma cutting. So the big task for today is to plasma cut out this spare tire well, get all this rusty metal out of here, and then I'm also coming, this car actually has 2 spare tire wells, interestingly enough. This is one that's over in the right rear quarter, the passenger quarter. I cut some of this a while ago and just kind of left it like that, so that's getting cut out, and the plan is to have to build out, to kind of box out the inside here and then have a resonator right kind of sit up under the car so you can't see it from the side or below, and then we'll just exit out the back on the passenger side. So this cut out, and then I also need to do a cut over there for my fuel pump, but that will be the last thing I do because I have to do some measurements there. Hidden stereo and amp may have to get relocated, but we'll worry about that at another time. So let's get cutting. Ah, that sucked. Alright, so the basic idea here is I'm just trying to keep an even line from the top of this area up here to the top of my tape so that I've got a clean line to cut, and that kind of goes all the way around. It's hard to show, but basically just going to take a cutoff wheel and cut a straight line so I've got a nice nice path to create my patch. So time to cut. Okay, so quick recap here at the end of the day. Got this about half welded in. Still a bunch of problem areas where there's gaps, as you can kind of see where the light's coming through, like right back there. But that's how it goes with kind of making your own patch panels and old thin metal. So as you guys probably saw, this is kind of the view from underneath. It's a little dark, but you can kind of make it out. So plan here is to finish up the welding, and then I'm going to come around with a angle grinder and just grind that flush all the way around. And then we'll probably just do a little bit of seam sealer and undercoat, and it'll look perfectly fine. So yeah, pretty pleased with how it's going. Again, this is on the cheap, not having to buy a $500 floor pan and do all of the accompanying work that involves replacing an entire rear floor pan. So this will do just fine. The metal I ended up using is actually, it's not 16 gauge, it's like 15 or 15 and a half gauge, something like that. So pretty thick, pretty substantial. I didn't feel the need to like do any kind of bracing under that, so it's not gonna have to carry a whole lot of weight. But yeah, so far so good. Alright, quick update time. And what we have here is a completely welded floor pan. Some of these welds were pretty good and some were not. It's basically just a combination of layered tacks and consistent beads. Let me see if I can kind of come in. So that right there, that turned out to be a consistent bead. Some areas not super high quality, but like anything with welding, this is a really good project to just kind of hone your skills and practice on. What's going to happen up here is the last thing you saw is I was just kind of wiping down a lot of the dust. I'm just going to tape some of that off, probably around the top of the tire wheel well thing, and paint that. But before I do that, I'm going to grind from the bottom. I'm probably going to generate some heat, so I don't want to paint that and burn my new paint in. So we're going to let that dry, go under the car, do a whole bunch of grinding right next to my head, which will be great. And once we get all that cleaned up, I can actually go ahead and undercoat the bottom of this thing. So we're going to undercoat, we'll prep the gas tank for final install, and then we'll paint up here, and that should be a wrap for the episode. So that's what's going to happen next. Okay, so that's a wrap for this episode. What you see here is everything's basically welded up, primed, painted. Just used some leftover satin wheel paint that I had. Looks fine. I'll eventually get around to coating all of this the same, probably satin black again once I get it cleaned up. But yeah, that's it for this part of the episode. On the underside, we can just go down there real quick. This is where we are, pardon the bad lighting. Got all my edges kind of trimmed up here, and grinded flush, so it looks half decent. Also got the tank painted and mounted, so that's in there. But nice and flat, you know, no frills, nothing special, but saved about 480 bucks because this piece of metal was pretty cheap. I think it was like $30 for that whole sheet. So quick and effective way to get rid of rust, and now I've got a workspace that I can mount a battery in, maybe do some other interesting things, maybe throw a nitrous bottle back here, something like that. Yeah, but that's it for this episode. Stay tuned. We are back to work on a different part of the project, exhaust and some more hot side stuff. Yeah, coming up, so we're gonna knock out all the things we need to get knocked out with the car up in the air, and then we're gonna get back to the engine compartment and some wiring. So stay tuned, subscribe if you're not already subscribed, and thanks for watching.